This story enrages me.
Enraged Mike. Yeah.
Today's not so critical update. Not so critical update. We're just doing it. I hate the framing from, and I don't know if I'd call Inc.com mainstream media, but just this acceptance of the premise.
Lamestream media.
That thank you, Peter. That corporations are always right and employees are always lazy. It's just enraging. So this basically is a story where Inc.com is jerking off Google to say that they are using this. Google secretly uses the quiet hiring method as a backwards yet brilliant recruiting strategy.
Brilliant.
The genius way big tech sources and secures the best staff.
Oh, yeah. The best stuff that it already has.
So two things. One is this idea of quiet quitting.
Do we want to do a recap on quiet quitting and quiet
that's
hiring?
what I was going to say. I think to some extent it gets conflated with overemployment. And the case with overemployment is basically I have a job. I don't really necessarily have any intention of doing it, or I do the absolute bare minimum to not get fired for as long as possible, knowing that eventually I probably will. And I do that at 2 or 3 or 4 or 8 companies and just collect a paycheck for as long as I can, selling the same 8 hours to all these companies, doing the bare minimum to get by.
Yep.
Quiet quitting, as described in the media, is more a situation where employees are saying, I'm going to work the hours I'm supposed to be here. I'm going to do the job that I'm supposed to do, and I'm just not going to do more. And to some extent, I've been a business owner. I've been a hiring manager. Do I want to hire somebody who's coming in saying, like, I'll do the bare minimum to get by? Probably not. Like, don't maybe tell me that in an interview. But at the same time, I don't think
that's what quiet quitting is.
So what's your sense of it then, John?
Quiet quitting, first off, terrible fucking name that
Agreed.
Makes it sound like the employee is in the wrong. Obviously created to make it sound like the employee is in the wrong. Because what the employee is saying, what the employee is doing, they're not quitting, they're just working. They're not overworking. They're not going above and beyond. One of the favorite bullshit terms thrown out by employers. They don't need to because that's not what their agreement says to do. Their agreement says you're to work 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. Okay, you have deadlines, you have projects, and you have your little box that you need to just make sure you stay in. That's what they do. They don't go to the after party, after work parties or after work drinks. They don't stay until 7 or 8 at night to finish a deadline. They do their work in the prescribed time that's been agreed upon, and that's it. That's not quiet quitting. That's just fucking working.
What's your sense, Peter?
I agree with John. I think there's a culture of where companies expect employees to do more, and there's a whole thing of like, we're looking for team players who put 110% in and really love the company and blah, blah, blah. And if you don't do that, you're not a good employee.
You're not doing your part.
Yeah, you're not doing a part for the family that you're part of.
Right.
And quiet quitting is the kind of bullshit term that's made to describe people who've just decided they've had enough and they're just going to do what's required of them. That's it.
That's not the bare minimum, right? That's just the work. Calling it the bare minimum puts another negative, chip on it or connotation where you're saying that by doing the bare minimum, it's not enough.
So anyway, I want to just describe what this quiet hiring thing is.
Go ahead.
So Inc.com, which, by the way, Mike, I don't know if you should be surprised that a website called Inc.com, as in incorporated.com, is...
no, I'm not surprised at all. Just enraged by it.
Smoking off Google.
Balls. Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny that we all characterize Google as a male there.
I mean, it has two O's. I just imagine.
All right, okay.
Slurping on the. Yeah, go ahead.
No, please.
That's what
I'd
you
like to hear
imagine,
more
John?
about this.
That's
you see
exactly
their logo. Like that's
vividly.
How can you look at their logo and not think that?
Well, you know what? Do they have a Google Doodle of like?
Oh, jeez.
Anyway, so the quiet hiring is where instead of looking for external candidates for positions that come up, they identify internally. There's a panel of people who identify top performing employees who are like going above and beyond,
Right?
And then they hire from inside, and also they use internal employees to identify external candidates. So rather than going out and people who apply normally get considered, but it's like a sort of sanctioned nepotism. Yeah, absolutely, 100%. So quiet hiring isn't quite hiring; it's promoting people.
Promotion, right?
And, and quiet hiring for external candidates is nepotism.
Fucking terms.
And maybe you can get promoted, but only after you're already doing the other job in addition to your own.
Yeah. This is one thing that always pissed me off about internal probation periods, right? So there was one place I was at where I was told that I could get a promotion to be manager, and I had to go through a 6-month probation as the manager first. And I said, okay, I'll go up for it. They were like, you're perfect for this, Pete. You can, you're already leading a couple of people, and we think you'd be great at this role. And I was like, okay, cool. Yeah, I'll do the 6-month probation, but you put me on the manager's salary for the whole time, right? And they were like, no, that's not how it works. You have to prove yourself first. I was like, but that means that for those 6 months, at the end of the 6 months, if you decide that I have got the job, then I will have been doing a manager's job for the last 6 months, but for a lower salary. Or I get to the end of the 6 months and you say that I'm not good enough, in which case I've been trying to do extra work and you don't want to compensate me for it. And then I will go down again. So, but to
That's
the same
crazy,
salary.
Peter.
Yeah. But I think it's a standard
crazy
thing.
That some company would do that. That they would promise you a promotion and lead into it with a probationary period and say you'll get this much money when you succeed, and then not. That's insane. I cannot believe that.
It's a pretty standard practice. I think it's happened to me more than once at different places. So, but it's always frustrated me that the deal hasn't been. Yeah, we'll back pay you for those 6 months you were acting as that in that role.
That sounds fair.
Yeah, very rarely received as fair by the executives, I have to say. What do you think, Mike?
I feel really torn on this. So,
really,
one thing they say in the article is that people who are these quiet quitters could be setting their careers back by not pursuing these opportunities. And to some extent, I think there's something to that. Presumably, you earn a promotion when you outgrow your existing job. And if you're working strictly within the parameters of your job, I think it's fair to say that's not showing growth. You have not.
You don't need to promote. You don't need to move up.
Yeah, right. Sure. That's fine. If you want to get promoted, then you do have to grow outside of that box. Mm-hmm. But that's your decision. A totally fair trade-off. I think it's totally fair to say, like, I'm going to do the job you paid me for, and I'm going to do it well, and I'm not going to volunteer and do anything else. And I think for certain jobs, that's exactly what you want. But at the same time, especially if I'm like a early stage startup, if I'm a small business locally, as a owner or as a hiring manager, I mean, I want somebody who's going to do more than that. Is that just me trying to take advantage of other people?
I think instead of looking for people who will go above and beyond, you should look for the most qualified person.
Yeah, and there's other ways that you can get around it. You can give stock options or actual stock. You can make it a cooperative if you like. You can make it so that people who work for the company genuinely are getting rewarded when the company succeeds.
Well, the carrot, the carrot on the stick is just the carrot being stocks of any sort, any type of shares in the company, they're exactly that. They're to drive you to do your best so that the company succeeds, so that you get a payout.
I think that's fair. That seems to
100%. Oh yeah. That
it's
system's
very
totally
logical in my head. I
but
think
it
that's
doesn't
a great
mean that I should work 30 hour or like 10, 15-hour days. I should still work the healthy amount that that I want, like, and that we've agreed upon, of course.
Yeah, you're literally invested in the company once you get shares. So
does that change how you look at that role? Do you see that role as larger if you're getting that kind of reimbursement?
What kind of role? Sorry.
Well, to this idea that I'll perform my job description in the 8 hours available, nothing more.
Yeah.
If you now have stock options where you're invested in the growth of the company, does that change the way you approach that?
No, I think that you're totally doing everything acceptable.
Sure.
That
so why would I give you stock options instead of just? I'll just pay you what we agreed on.
Because you want me to do the best job to my ability,
but
within what we agreed on.
How does that change whether I give you stock options or not? Saying if I don't give you stock options, but we agreed on a salary, you're not going to do as good a job?
No, not at all. I think that you're selling me the company. You're selling me the idea of working for you. And by doing so, you're giving me, by winning me over, you're allowing me bonuses and a salary and potential stock over, a 4-year vesting period. That drives me to, one, stay, which is a huge problem in the tech industry, is retention. It drives me to do a good job for a long period of time, right?
Sure, but your whole premise was I'll do a good job for what you're going to pay me, and then just leave me alone beyond that.
I think that the stocks or the stock options change the dynamic from something where I'm going to do a good job and to an acceptable level where there's no reason to fire me because you're happy with what I'm doing, to something that I am personally invested in and that I'm going to be thinking about outside of work hours and put a bit more effort than is contractually required. And I think,
not what it sounds like John was saying.
Or I'm going to commit more time to you. I will work for you for a longer period of time because you have golden handcuffs on me. The golden handcuffs being a vesting schedule. You will keep me for longer
than I was.
Because the truth is that we have a retention issue in the tech industry. People, millennials and under, jump ship every 2 years. They ain't going to jump ship if there's $60,000 on the table that they haven't invested yet. Or maybe they will, depending on how big of a competitor or how big of a comp difference it is, compensation package it is. But I think that's you're just adding more cherries on top as an employer. Should not mean that I need to give more or less depending on what you're giving me. I'm going to fight for the best compensation I can get. Give me no stocks and no bonus. I'm still going to work what I'm supposed to. Give me stock options and bonuses. I'm going to work what I'm supposed to. The difference is that you won't get to hire me if a different competitor is offering me all the things I mentioned and you're not.
Yeah. So I still feel so torn about this. I totally agree, acknowledge, believe that corporations, even beyond just business in general, have been significantly taking advantage of employees. The wage gap, the gap between productivity and salary, everything indicates that it's a huge disparity. I also totally get the employee position of like, well, look, I'm just going to do what you're paying me to do. I think that takes value out of the equation. However, it's value that the employee wasn't participating in or realizing anyway. So I guess from that perspective, have at it. I would love to see the system just be more equitable on both sides. I think part of what I push back against when you say these things, John, is it sounds like, well, you treat me like shit, so I'll treat you like shit. Which, okay, fair enough. I wish neither of us had to treat each other like shit, though.
But I'm not going to treat you like shit. I'm going to do a really good job.
By your own evaluation.
Yeah. because that's the
Yeah.
evaluation that I'm basing the evaluation off of what we agreed on. What we agreed
I
on
know.
was 40 hours a week, Monday through Friday. Good job. If I have to do 60 hours a week, but we only agreed to 40 to impress you or remain in a positive light, something's wrong.
Yeah. So we're talking specifically about salaried exempt employees then in this case.
Well,
And
yes
maybe that's
no.
part of my distinction. If I'm paying you for 40 hours hourly and you don't want to take overtime, no problem. But part of the benefit or theoretical benefit of being a salaried employee is you get more money, greater flexibility, but you're not locked to 40 hours. You could work more, you could work less. I'm sure almost always more. But isn't that part of the deal too?
That's true. That's very true. Something I didn't consider up until this point is exemption from overtime. It all comes down to the agreement. I've seen contracts that say you are to work minimum 40 hours a week. And I've seen contracts that say that you are projected to work around 40 hours, more or less.
Yeah, I don't know if this is an interesting conversation or not. I find it interesting. I want to understand this. This is something that I kind of struggle with. I don't know if doing that in real time is engaging to people, but let us know in the comments if you made it this far, for sure.
Yeah, so we'll do another episode, hour long. We'll talk about this.
Yeah.
We'll
We're not getting paid by the hour for this. So I think that contractually, Mike, I think that's our time up. So end of
Phoning it in.
episode.